can get ready, please.
Okay. Excuse me, Your Worship, you're live.
Okay, Your Worship, I think we're live if you're good to go.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. All right, Council, it's 5 p.m. Time to get down to work. And we'll start off with the land acknowledgement. Today, we acknowledge that Collingwood is located on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. And I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda. And the motion reads that the content of the council agenda, for February 22, 2021, be adopted as presented, as amended. First item is consent agenda item. Added 8.3, various residents' comments regarding report P 2021-4 application for permit to destroy trees, Blue Fairways phases 5 and 6, Cranberry Trail. An additional item motion added 10.1, development of legislation strengthening the definition of hate speech, Director Culver. An amendment, deputations from Dave Merrill and Bob Tyson be permitted regarding the tree cutting permit matter. And the fourth amendment is a motion regarding the Hamilton Drain Trail traffic lights be amended. And so with those, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Berman and Councillor Jeffrey, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And the next item is declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Council, any declarations tonight? Seeing, go ahead, Councillor Hamlin.
I received, I'm not sure if you just included this, but I understand Councillor Jeffrey's bringing a motion this evening with respect to the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and, sorry.
It's a notice of motion, yes.
Oh, notice of motion.
It's a notice of motion. So it will be included under the appropriate item, which is 11, notices of motion.
All right, thank you. So I'll declare a conflict for that item because I sit as a member of the board of directors of that institute.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations, Council? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position as we move through the agenda, please let me know and the general nature thereof. And so the next item is 4.1. It is the amendment or the minutes from the February 16, 2021 meeting. And the motion is that the minutes of the council meeting held February 16, 2021 be approved as presented. I get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Berman, Councillor Comey, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And is there any business arising from the previous minutes, Council? Seeing none, that brings us to community announcements, and we have a speaker with us tonight. Item 5.1, the Unity Collective Experience, and an update, and it's coming from Marcia Alderson, who is a member of the Diversity Collective. Sarah, can you please patch Miss Alderson through for us? Marcia, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson and members of council and the public. I appreciate you having us here tonight. On behalf of the Unity Collective, your support is very appreciated. Thank you. Now, we're reaching the end of Black History Month, but this was not just another Black History Month in North America. As of a year ago, the conversation changed. The collective is a group of dedicated citizens neighbors, advocates, and supporters who are committed to taking action to promote unity in this town. We were formed after global and regional events, after the murder of George Floyd, which then sparked Black Lives Matter movements and marches across the world, and personally in Collingwood. It was an incredible time, 2,000 people marching the streets for what is right and just. And they spoke. They spoke loud and they spoke clear that they wanted change. So thank you to the town of Collingwood for making this possible. And you have formed and helped this group of citizens. And our purpose is to build an inclusive Collingwood that welcomes and celebrates our diversity through unified and collective collaboration and action. Mark my words, I know our town is changing. All cultures are finding their way here because it is the good life. Because they can now work from anywhere and they choose here. Well, we all did. I mean, it is pretty fabulous. So the Unity Collective seeks to see an inclusive Collingwood that is built to welcome and celebrate diversity. A strong community is the sum of all of its parts, given equal consideration and opportunity to be heard and succeed. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. So Black History Month will come to a close soon. Indigenous History Month is just around the corner. And it's our hope that on every day of every year, now and into the future, the council and members of the Collingwood community will continue their support for an evolution of understanding that will challenge the status quo and bring equity to our corner of a world that is changing. So the Unity Collective's role will be to observe and educate and partner on initiatives that follow the core values that we have identified for our group. And our values are a demonstrated foundation of trust, actions that are globally inspired but Collingwood focused, the need to respect and promote our shared history and our stories, to be continually inspired by action and bold ideas, and to build bridges across all groups of our community. Diversity is a strength in our community. Now, on that line of telling our stories, we, as a Unity Collective, are pleased to promote an initiative by the Town of Collingwood, which is telling our stories. Imagine, it fit perfectly. So the Telling Our Stories initiative, our first special guest speaker is Dr. Rita Sheldon Deverell. This will be held, and if you go onto the rally point at collingwood.ca on February 25th at 12 noon, you'll be able to tune in and see what she has to say. Rita is a theater artist, television producer, director, scholar, a founder of Vision TV. She was the first woman to lead a journalism program at a Canadian university and concluded her term as news director at Aboriginal Peoples TV Network in 2005. Now, Rita's awards include 2 Geminis, the Black Women's Civic Engagement Leadership Award, and the Order of Canada. Dr. Deverell will speak to the importance of storytelling and the role in which stories can fuel social change. The Unity Collective is all about telling stories, sharing the commonality between cultures, and making sure that every person that comes to Collingwood feels welcome and feels a sense of belonging. This is an incredible town. I witnessed it, we all witnessed it. They all spoke and shouted for change with signs, with marching, with everything. This town is changing. I am so proud of this town. And I thank you, the council and Mayor Saunderson and the people for allowing us to create something just arm's length, outside of the council that gives every citizen a voice and a seat at the table. So thank you. We're going to celebrate Collingwood as a welcome and inclusive community because, my friends, they are all coming because we've got the best place on the earth and we're going to have to share it now. So let's open it up and let's invite all this wonderful richness of cultures and community and food and, did I mention, music, and let's celebrate them. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to my fellow Unity Collective people, and we're here. We're here. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to me, reach out to anybody in the collective. Thank you to Collingwood Today. And thank you to Dean Colliver, who has been an incredible guide in this, and to the town council. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Marcia, thank you for that great presentation. Council, questions or comments from Marcia? Seeing none, I just want to thank you for all the work you're doing. I had the wonderful opportunity of attending one of your meetings, and those are some tough discussions going on around the table, and we appreciate all the hard work you're doing. And so thank you to you and the other members of the collective for the great work you're doing. And we look forward to the first of many stories coming up on February 25.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Marcia. And with that, then I will go around the council table, starting with the Deputy Mayor for community announcements. Deputy Mayor?
Well, to be honest, I can't follow that up. So the answer is I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
That's a safe answer, and you're absolutely right. We cannot follow that one up, but we will try. And Councillor McLeod, anything tonight?
I'm just busy putting the 25th in my calendar.
Okay. And that takes us then to Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just continuing with that wonderful presentation in Black History Month, and we're going to tie in a little bit to Women's Day today. I thought it was more than worthwhile to mention Doreen Elaine Lewis, who is the first Black female mayor in Canada. She was elected in 1984, recognized with an honorary doctorate from Mount St. Vincent University for her humanitarian work. Dr. Lewis also received the United Nations Global Citizenship Award. Winning the election in a town with only 13 Black residents was an exceptional achievement at the time. Dr. Lewis led a rich and exemplary life, excelling in politics, healthcare, academia, and the arts. And then just a quick mention that, of course, this week we'll also recognize Pink Shirt Day. And we want to thank Trevor for keeping this day at the forefront each year. As a mom to 2 elementary-aged kids, I'm very familiar with the challenges our young people face with bullying and some of the unique obstacles they have in the online world. A favorite book in our house is a book called Wonder, which is an incredible book for middle-aged readers, much better than the movie, as always. And a quote from that book that I thought was worthy of mentioning tonight is, when given a choice between being right and being kind, choose kind. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have next Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. I just want to thank our executive assistant, Jenny Haynes, for giving us a reminder that it was Pink Shirt Day to our council. And I found one in my closet. I see that the deputy mayor has as well. So thank you very much to our wonderful staff to remind us about the little things that are huge things within our community and the world, but just to remind us, because sometimes we might have a selfish life and look towards introspective rather than being out and looking at the rest of the world. Thanks so much, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Berman. Okay, thank you. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Berman.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey. There you are.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Continuing on our wonderful celebration of Black History Month, and particularly tonight, I wanted to take the opportunity to comment on some of the work that our organization, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, is doing over the month. And they have been featuring key moments in Canadian municipal history impacting Black people and people of African descent on their Twitter account. And they've highlighted some of the first Black mayors and city councillors in Canadian history, along with uncomfortable truths, like the destruction of Africaville, Nova Scotia. We do this as part of our commitment to fighting anti-Black racism, both within our organization of FCM and of course in communities all across Canada. And my colleague and board member, Lindell Smith, he's a Halifax City Councillor. He quoted, "It's important to remember the terrible things that happened, the discrimination and displacement, but also the ownership and a sense of community, and now something to celebrate as we move forward." So they're very keen on hearing from our municipalities if there's something we're doing to commemorate Black History Month. And I've so enjoyed members of the Unity Collective's articles that have been published in the media. And so any of those that we can send or staff can send through Twitter with the hashtag Canadian Muni. So it's hashtag CDNMUNI, and FCM will get that and include it with their documents. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. And I saw today the article about the Collingwood Heritage Community Church, which was our local Black parish going back to the 1870s. And it, of course, is one of the projects of Carolyn and Sylvia Wilson, who also are the champions of the Sheffield Park Black Cultural Museum. And I've been there, and it is a spectacular display there. So when restrictions permit, I encourage everybody to get out and see that wonderful museum. And as well, I'm sure they'd be happy to see you at the church as well. Councillor Hamlin.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
I have two announcements. The first, just picking up on the anti-bullying day. Trevor Henson has been a real champion in our community for the anti-bullying campaign, and I am wearing a pink shirt. Hopefully it shows up. And we will be raising a flag, I think, this Wednesday, February 25th. So we'll invite council members out to that. And Trevor, thank you for all your hard work and making sure that this important initiative does not lose its place in the calendar. And secondly, full disclosure, I am a member of the board of the Collingwood Junior A Blues hockey team, but they have put together an outdoor rink contest, a backyard rink contest. They have over 115 entries for 5 categories, and voting is open on the website. They've had over 2,000 votes as of close end of day yesterday, and the voting stays open till February 26th. This has been a wonderful initiative to get people out skating in the safety of their backyards and socially within their own bubble. So it's great to see. And if you're interested in voting or seeing some of the rinks, and they are very spectacular. I was an arena manager at 11 years in my backyard, and there's some great rinks out there. So go on just to see. And it's great. The polar vortex timed it perfectly. And with that being said, we did get into our public meeting. That's item 6. And I have a script to read, so bear with me. Welcome to Collingwood's public planning meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally addressed as 2 Old Mountain Road. Members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposal once staff have completed their review. Once the public portion of the meeting has been completed, no more public discussion will be allowed. Before closing, I will ask 3 times for further comments. I will then ask council members if they have any final questions for staff. It is very important that the town receive the correct names and addresses, including postal code, of individuals having an interest in the planning application. Therefore, if you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or if you want to be notified of any future council or committee meetings concerning the application being considered, you must provide this information. Under the Planning Act, 1, only those who have verbally expressed any comments or concerns here tonight or provided a written submission of any comments or concerns prior to council's enactment of the bylaw have the right to appeal any decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal. And 2, if you do not make an oral submission this evening or a written submission to council before the bylaw is passed, you may not be added as a party to an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. This public hearing is being recorded. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes will be available to the general public, including on the town's website. I will ask that planning services also confirm that notification to the public has been given as required by the Planning Act within their presentation this evening. And with that, I will pass it to Director Farr to take us through the presentation. Go ahead, Adam, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, members of the public, and staff. This evening, Community Planner Justin Tico will be providing a presentation on this public meeting. Justin?
Hi, Justin.
Hi, good
The stage
evening.
is yours.
All right, so good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, and Council. My name is Justin Tico. I'm the Community Planner assigned to the file for 2 Old Mountain Road. Next slide, please. So brief agenda. So the meeting will follow the town's standard public meeting format. Mayor Saunderson has already provided an introduction, and the remainder of the meeting will consist of the confirmation of public notice, an overview of the zoning bylaw amendment review process, municipal overview of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment by planning services, an overview of the development proposal by the applicant, and the meeting will be open to then receive any comments or questions from the public, followed by comments and questions from council. Next slide, please. Tonight's public meeting is required under Section 34 of the Planning Act, and in accordance with the Planning Act, I confirm that notice of complete application and public meeting was published and circulated on January 28th, 2021. Notice was given by ordinary mail to every landowner within 120 meters of the subject lands and published in the Collingwood Connection newspaper. Next slide, please. So this slide generally provides an overview of the development review process. So for this application, a pre-consultation meeting was held with the applicant on November 4th, 2020. The applicant was subsequently provided with a detailed set of comments for completing their application submission. Step 2 involves the applicant submitting their zoning bylaw amendment application under the Planning Act, accompanied by the required supporting plans and reports. The applicant submitted the application on January 5th, 2021. The application was reviewed by planning services and deemed complete on January 20th, 2021. Notice of complete application public meeting, as noted, was published and circulated on January 28th of this year. Step 3 involves the circulation of the application submission to various town departments and external agencies for review and comment. For step 4, the application is currently under review and comments are being provided. And that brings us to step 5, tonight's statutory public meeting. So we're here this evening to receive comments from the public on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And I'll return to this slide later in the presentation to review the next steps. Next slide, please. So the application submitted is for a zoning bylaw amendment, which was submitted on January 5th. The applicant is Crest Point Real Estate Blue Mountain Inc., and their agent is the planning consultant Oz Kamel with MHBC Planning. The subject lands are municipally addressed as 2 Old Mountain Road and represent an area of approximately 2.59 hectares. Next slide, please. This slide shows an aerial photograph of the site outlined in red from 2018. Notable change since this image was taken is the Sleep Country store presently under construction adjacent to the First Street extension. The site's bound by Mountain Road to the north and west, Balsam Street to the east, and First Street extension to the south. The subject lands are known as the Blue Mountain Center and contain Cineplex movie theater, Staples, Crystal Buffet, and other commercial uses. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of their proposal. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property from Regional Commercial Exception 4 to a separate Regional Commercial Exception zone. The purpose of the application is to permit a pet store defined as the use of land or building where animals or birds as pets are sold, kept for sale, groomed, trained, but does not include the overnight breeding or boarding of pets as an additional permitted use. Next slide, please. This slide shows the current land use designations on the property. So the County of Simcoe official plan designates the town of Collingwood as a primary settlement area, which is where a significant portion of population and employment growth is to occur. Primary settlement areas are suitable for intensification, public transit services, and have full municipal services, and are intended to develop as complete communities. The Town of Collingwood official plan designates the subject lands as Regional Commercial District. Permitted uses in the Regional Commercial District include department stores, general merchandise stores, home centers, home improvement stores, retail commercial establishments, food supermarkets, home and auto supply stores, restaurants, places of recreation and entertainment, and business and personal services. The regional commercial district is to be distinguished by providing a planned commercial precinct that functions as a single integrated location for larger regionally oriented commercial establishments. For Area A of the regional commercial district, north of the First Street extension, which includes these lands, the official plan contains policies that require retail units to be a minimum of 370 square meters in size. The lands are also located within the town's mixed-use intensification area. Next slide, please. Collingwood zoning bylaw currently zones the lands as regional commercial district exception 4 or C2-4. The C2 zone permits a wide range of commercial uses, and exception 4 specifically prohibits department stores, food supermarkets, home and auto supply stores, home centers, and warehouse membership clubs. Exception 4 also contains provisions that require retail commercial establishments to have a minimum gross leasable area of 370 square meters, and further that the maximum gross leasable area for all lands of this zone shall be 9,290 square meters. It also requires a minimum 9-meter landscape strip to be maintained adjacent to Balsam Street. A pet store is not currently a permitted use in the C4-2 zone. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of surrounding land uses in the area of the subject property, outlined in red. Surrounding land uses are predominantly also regional commercial district zones, as well as resort commercial C3 and mixed-use commercial C4 to the east. Next slide, please. This slide shows the current site plan of the subject property, which is labeled on the plan as parcel B. Circled in red is the existing building E on the property, where the proposed pet store use as defined in the application is proposed to be located. So it's the building that currently has a Crystal Buffet in the end of it. Next slide, please. So this slide is an excerpt from that site plan that shows the building E in more detail. Presently, building E is comprised of 3 commercial units, and the proposed use is intended to occupy the 2 eastern units outlined in red. No new floor area is proposed for the requested use. Next slide, please. This slide provides some photographs to give context to the area, specifically surrounding uses along Mountain Road. So we have the center containing Winners and the Journey's Blend coffee shop. Next slide, please. And this provides some more uses along along Mountain Road rather, including Marks and the gas station. Next slide, please. And this slide provides some photographic context for the other uses on the subject property, such as Cineplex, the Sleep Country that's currently under construction, and the Staples store. Next slide, please. And this slide shows building E, where the proposed use is intended to be located. Next slide, please. So the proposal is still under review by town and commenting agencies. To date, comments have been received from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority and the town's Environmental Services Department. All comments have indicated no objection or have indicated no objection with standard conditions. Technical comments will be compiled and shared with the applicant so that they may be addressed accordingly. Next slide, please. To date, no public comments have been received on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Next slide, please. So issues being tracked include compatibility with the planned intent of the regional commercial district and ensuring that there's adequate water servicing for the proposed use. Next slide, please. So after tonight's public meeting, the next steps include potential changes by the applicant to the proposal based on additional information provided based on the public input and technical comments received. Writing of a comprehensive staff report providing a recommendation on the application to Development and Operations Services Committee and Council. Council's decision on the application at a regular meeting of Council to approve or refuse the application. Following Council's decision, a notice of passing or refusal will be circulated to all individuals and organizations who have requested notice. This notice will also be posted in the local newspaper. Subsequent to Council's decision, there is an appeal period should anyone wish to appeal the decision of Council to the local planning appeal tribunal. If the bylaw is passed by Council and no appeals are received within the appeal period, then the amending zoning bylaw would come into effect. Next slide, please. So this slide outlines opportunities for members of the public to stay informed for when the application will be considered by Council. Members of the public can check the town's website to review committee meeting agendas, or there's an option to subscribe to meeting updates of interest via the town's website. If a member of the public wishes to receive notice of decision on the application, please email Clerk Alness. I want to remind everyone that tonight's meeting is to receive comment on the application from members of the public and share information on the proposal. Should anyone wish to submit additional comments or concerns following the meeting, you're welcome to email me at jteakle or jteakle@collingwood.ca. So this concludes planning services presentation. So thank you, your worship and council. And I understand that the applicant also has a presentation prepared for this evening.
Thank you for that, Justin. And I will look to staff to bring in the developer, the applicant, please.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, Oz Kamal with MHPC Planning here is in attendance this evening to answer any questions. Speak to the matter if he has any comments to add to that presentation.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Kamal. Would you like to add anything to the presentation we've received?
If I just have a couple slides that I just wanted to go over, if that's okay. If I could just, I think I already provided my presentation earlier. Someone.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think they're bringing it up now.
perfect. Good afternoon, Mayor Saunderson and members of council. My name is Oz Kamal, here on behalf of Crest Point Real Estate Blue Mountains, Inc. I'm working with town staff on behalf of our client with respect to this minor zoning application. There's a correction there. It should be 2 Old Mountain Road. Apologies for that. Next slide, please. The site is zoned regional commercials, region commercial zone exception 4, so C2-4. While this zone does permit retail establishments, it does not identify a pet store as a permitted use. The pet store use will include grooming and training of pets within the building and primarily sell pet accessories. As Mr. Teakle pointed out, the proposed pet store definition is the use of land or building where animals or birds as pets are sold, kept for sale, groomed, trained, but does not include the breeding or overnight boarding of pets. Next slide, please. The subject site is located west of Balsam Street on the north side of First Street Extension. There's approximately 316 meters of frontage along Old Mountain Road. The lot depth is approximately 214 meters. The proposed location for the pet store is intended to occupy existing vacant space. No new floor area is proposed in this rezoning. Overall, the shopping center already provides approximately 6,222 square meters of commercial space with 369 parking spaces. We're anticipating the proposed pet store to be approximately 12,000 to 15,000 square feet, or approximately 1,100 to 1,400 square meters. Next slide, please. In terms of why the request is being made, it's a combination of things, quite frankly. It's COVID-19, and in addition to the changing retail environment and lease expiries, have led to anticipated vacancies that will need to be filled. This is becoming increasingly difficult given the Ontario-wide lockdowns and the limited retail offerings available to the general public these days. So what we're looking for is leasing flexibility with the use requested. So the existing zoning does permit a variety of uses, including retail. Now, the proposed use will primarily sell pet accessories and have some small pets available as well. The proposed tenant typically will work with the Humane Society and local animal shelters to assist with cat and dog adoptions by having pets in their store. The use will include a training area for pets, as well as a grooming station where customers can bring their pets. And it was just based on the variety of the offerings in this type of a retail establishment that town staff had advised that a zoning bylaw amendment be made to ensure that the retail use and all of its accessory components are properly addressed. Next slide. Next slide, please.
Sorry, through the chair, that's the last one.
Oh, sorry. I just thought there was a concluding slide, but I guess not. So on that note, I apologize. I'm more than happy to answer any questions from the public or from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal. So I will put the first call out for public comment. Sarah, do we have anyone in the gallery who would like to comment on the public meeting today?
Let me remind anybody that wants to speak to this public planning meeting to press the raise your hand feature if you wish to speak, and we will invite you to ask your questions and share your concerns. If you're on a phone, please press *9, and we will allow you to be unmuted, and you'll be required to press *6 to unmute yourself. And at this point, we have Matthew Pretty that would like to talk, so we will allow him to join us.
Okay. Will he be participating by phone or by video? Sarah, do you know?
At this point, we can't. We can't allow him. There's some technical difficulties. Unfortunately, it appears that his Zoom is not compatible. So if Matthew has any comments that he wants to share in the chat, he's welcome to do so or share it with us after the meeting.
Okay.
Or if he wishes to phone in. And if there's anyone else wishing to speak, please press the raise your hand feature. And there's no further individual wishing to speak to this application.
Further, well, I will call for the second and third times then. So third and final call, if there's any member of the public who would like to speak to this zoning bylaw amendment, now is your opportunity. Sarah, you can't hear you very well.
Application. There is a question from Matthew Pretty about painting a mural on the wall. So that's outside of the zoning bylaw amendment, and staff can reach out to him regarding that.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes our public meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you.
And we will now move on then to item 7, which is deputations. And the first deputation, 7.1, is reopening plans. Andrew Siebert, President, Blue Mountain Village Association. If we can get Andrew through.
All right, it appears that Andrew should be here. So if he...
There he is. Welcome, Andrew.
Good evening, Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hall, and councillors. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Sigward. I am the president of the Blue Mountain Village Association. I just want to thank you all for this opportunity to provide a bit of an update on some of the winter operations and planning at Blue Mountain Village, and to be able to make ourselves available to answer any questions that you may have. A little bit of a background on the Village Association. So we represent about 50 businesses in the village. Collectively, we employ more than 3,000 people at this time of year. Typically, we welcome about 3 million annual visitors to the resort community, and that results in an economic impact in the South Georgian Bay region of about a little more than $500 million. We have a strong history of successful collaboration with the town of Collingwood, despite our municipal boundaries, and we've worked together on a number of community and economic development initiatives over the years. Some important ones to note are collaboration on transit, support for regional healthcare service, tourism planning across our region, labor supply, attainable housing research, and so much more. It's been a very unique and challenging period for everyone, particularly tourism destinations like ours. And I think we've all done a really good job of responding to COVID-19 and really working very closely with our respective local public health agencies. That is kind of how this response plan has worked in the province. So us with Grey Bruce, and of course yourselves and the municipality of Collingwood with Simcoe Muskoka. I do feel that we have collectively missed an opportunity to work a bit more closely to find some common ground and to respond to some of the community division that we are seeing together. And given how integrated and how close our communities are, I think it's really a must-do going forward. Our members worked really diligently to prepare for this winter season, following a very successful and safe summer and fall season. That included an investment of, an unplanned investment in COVID protocols of about a little more than $1.2 million from our membership base in the village alone. This included a lot of one-on-one work with the Grey Bruce Public Health, and team members through that public health agency really guided us on all of our operational plans. Every business and operation, large and small, has had public health work with us on all of our protocols. In addition to ensuring that the provincial cohorts have been, or the provincial requirements have been applied, we've also enhanced some additional safety measures that have been operating within the village that I think go a bit above and beyond. We implemented mandatory mask and face coverings to be worn by anyone in the village, both indoor and outdoor. We formed a really innovative ambassador and security team who has been providing on the ground education and enforcement every day of the week. And really that is our, it's a service that we provide visitors and guests, but it's also a way to remind people, educate people, and enforce COVID-19 protocols. We've implemented some common capacity management standards across all businesses in the village. And as you know from the documentation we sent a few weeks ago, we also suspended all of our out-of-region marketing. One thing I'll share with you that we did that went above and beyond the provincial requirements, our hotel operators actually ceased operations during the shutdown, even though they were technically permitted to operate. But we chose to halt that operation while we were going through the important shutdown and preparing for the winter. One of the things that we've also done, we've actually done this since the beginning of the pandemic, is formed a regional COVID-19 response working group. So that consists of economic development professionals, tourism stakeholders, municipalities from across the South Georgian Bay area. And we meet weekly with a goal of sharing some of our demand management challenges and data, and as well as just sharing lessons learned. So I really want to encourage the town of Collingwood to join us more frequently in that forum so that we can share information and help each other be as successful as we can. Our guiding philosophy along the way has been that consistent operating controls, active safety protocols, and good supports for businesses and the community is the most effective way to limit risk. And our track record on that has been very strong through summer and fall. And we really believe that it's not where you're from that matters, it's how we all manage within our responsibilities and how we all behave. And that sort of filters in through all of our operational planning. We'd really like to work more closely with the town of Collingwood over the course of the remaining winter season and beyond, not only to improve our collaboration on our COVID-19 response, but really to focus our energies on planning for the recovery, looking at the regional planning that I know this council is very focused on, and also, healing the divisions within our community and helping to make sure that we support everyone. So I'd really like to suggest that we could perhaps form one of those, a working group, and see how we can achieve those goals. I believe that Dan Skelton is also in the queue and available to provide a little bit more information that specific to the resort. And then both he and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. Oh, I think you're still on mute.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Council, any questions or comments for Mr. Siegwertz on his presentation today? Seeing none, Andrew, thank you very much for that thorough presentation, and we will be in touch.
Alrighty, thank you.
Great.
So,
I think he froze. All right. So item 7.2 of deputations is opposition to Blue Fairways Phase 5 and 6 from the Blue Fairways Phase 2 and 3 homeowners. Sarah, who do we have speaking to us from that group today?
Actually, Your Worship, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect.
All right, Stephanie will be letting them in. Stephanie, if you could confirm the speakers, that would be great.
Beth Allen will be speaking to this matter. She's in. I just, she can unmute herself.
I didn't catch Miss Allen's first name, sorry.
Beth.
Beth, okay, thank you. Ms. Allen, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank
You
you.
have 10 minutes, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, members of council, members of the community, and staff who are present today. We thank you for your time and attention. As mentioned, my name is Beth Allen, and I'm speaking on behalf of residents and homeowners in the Blue Fairway. I have slides, and there we go. Lovely. Thank you, Stephanie. If you can go to the next slide. Thank you. First, let me state that we do realize that the beauty we see here in front of us, that is part of our lovely community, is not something that we will see for the foreseeable future. We do realize there is development planned and it will go ahead. If you can go to the next slide, please. We are aware that this will be our future for a while at some point in the very near future. If you can go to slide 3, thank you. However, we are asking what will be gained by the community of Collingwood by granting the builder's request to fast track this clear cutting of these 17 acres at this time. We're hoping for a better balance between the developer and the needs of the community. Next slide, please. From our perspective, we have 4 issues with the builder's request. The first one is the trust that we have of this builder. As residents of Blue Fairway, many of us do not have any trust for McPherson Builders. You, as members of council and the mayor, have received a number of letters and emails from homeowners sharing examples of our experiences with the builder. I cannot stress enough the sheer volume of deficiencies, the length of time to remedy deficiencies, often resulting in less than desirable results, the time and effort of homeowners to get these deficiencies taken care of, as well as the financial and emotional toll taken on residents as a result of the lack of oversight by McPherson on their building processes. It appears that their business model is one of get it up fast and fix it later. But as we have found, it is not usually fixed. And once trees are gone, they cannot be fixed because they cannot be brought back. We are particularly puzzled by the request to fast track, given that none of our homes have ever been closed on time. Often dates are moved 3 to 5 times before the closing date. As well, trades and supplies seem to be a problem right now, and our phases aren't even finished. As well, they have just began building the 2 condo buildings as part of phase 4. So we're just wondering how that will be completed given the trades and issues with supplies. We're concerned that McPherson's ability to complete outstanding work in our phases 2, 3, and 4 would not be improved by the start of phase 5 and 6. We're also flummoxed that McPherson can offer to pay the town a deposit for trees when the builder has yet to return our grading security deposits. This is now going on for 3 years for those in phase 1. Next slide, please. Further, when it comes to trust, you may or may not be aware that McPherson has already clear cut an area of this forest. Quite a large swath has been cut down already along the Cranberry East-West Trail. This is an uncompleted portion of that road, but that whole area has already been cleared. Next slide, please. Secondly, the impact on the environment. We're worried about the amount of water in the marshy areas surrounding the golf course, as well as along the Georgian Trail, not to mention along our own properties here in Blue Fairway. Particularly in the spring, what happens when the significant snowfall that we've had this year no longer has trees and vegetation to absorb or help divert the water? What is the plan to reduce the impact of water now and in the future? We are worried about the wildlife. There is an extensive amount in that area. As well, our mistrust of McPherson does not give us any confidence that they will do anything to safeguard the environment. We are already concerned that piles of asphalt that have been dumped along Cranberry Trail will be buried as fill without being properly treated as required. Next slide, please. We really cannot see the alignment with the town of Collingwood's urban forestry management plan, and we are puzzled as to how, according to the bylaw, the site plan must be approved prior to granting a permit to remove trees, and yet that site plan has not yet been approved. So we're asking, what precedent is this setting for future development? Next slide, please. There's also an impact on our community. Currently, we're already experiencing a lot of traffic and a lot of noise due to the condos that are being built. This isn't a surprise. It is a building site. However, it already is being experienced that the builders are starting before the time that has been allotted according to bylaws and after that time, as well as the traffic and so on. We really would like to know what are the plans to help mitigate the traffic and the noise, and who is going to provide some oversight to ensure that the builder follows any such plans. Our requests, given respectfully, is that really the fast track removal of trees is denied. We've given 4 very solid reasons for this. You have had lots of information from residents in Blue Fairways to give you a sense of what we have experienced with this builder. We would prefer tree removal after the approval of a site plan. We would prefer that the deficiencies in phases 2, 3, and 4 were addressed before the removal of the trees. We request a maintenance of a forested 30-foot buffer of mature trees, that the path to the Georgian Trail that is currently at the Atoka Trail is either something is put in place in term so that we can have access to the trail, that there is a fulsome assessment of the impact of the water table and runoff prior to tree removal, that perhaps there is consideration for 2 phases rather than clear cut and build in one fell swoop, that there is some sort of assessment and plan for traffic congestion, and that the oversight of the developer during tree removal and building phases to ensure adherence to any sort of requirements, bylaws, etc., and to ensure that there isn't any issues with grading and drainage, which I will say has been quite an issue here in Blue Fairway, and that the penalties are in place for any bylaw or environmental infractions. Next slide, please. We all love Collingwood. That's why we're here. It's a beautiful place, it's magical, and we would like to ensure that that magic continues and ensure that there is an equitable balance between the needs of the developer and the needs of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for your presentation. Council, are there questions or comments for Ms. Allen? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time today, Ms. Allen, and for your comments.
Thank you.
Next, Sarah, I think we have Day Merrill for a deputation as well.
Yes, we do. We'll allow her in. All right, she should be present if she just wants to unmute herself and open her video.
Good afternoon, Day. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm very well. It's
All right.
really nice. It's really nice to see everyone again and be in front of you. So thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to speak today. Your Worship, Deputy Mayor Hall, members of council, staff, residents, and friends of Collingwood. In my 2+ year term as your first poet laureate, I had many opportunities to create and deliver poems on behalf of the town, various aspects of things that make Collingwood majestic and magical. This offering is another in that same vein, and it is specifically dedicated to the residents of Collingwood, human, animal, plant, mineral, in particular, the 7 grandfathers that we honor every day in the Awen Gathering Place. The poem is entitled, Not Today. There may be times when clear-cutting acres seems needed, when long-term accountability is ceded to attainable profits, speaking louder than sustainable practices. Times when surfing the wave of a bubble is so gripping that a blind eye is turned to what is slipping away. But not today. There may be places where trees are impediments to progress, clinging to sediment, impeding the process, merely objects of sentiment, no heed paid to residents, human or otherwise. Places where those of feeling give up on speaking up on behalf of all that makes our town appealing, but not today. There may be councils that decide the will of developers trumps the will of the people it is bound to serve, that allow speed and greed to have their way. Councils that think and act that way and vote for expediency versus any real need for immediacy. But please, not today. Every tree torn out of the ground before it is absolutely necessary is an affront to our nature. Please vote now. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Day. Council, any questions or comments for Ms. Merrill? Seeing none, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
And that brings us, I think, to our last deputation, Clerk Almas, and I think it's Mr. Thiessen.
Correct. All right, we don't see an individual named Mr. Bob Thiessen. So if he is able to press the raise your hand feature, and then we can identify you from all the other attendees. All right, Mr. Thiessen should be present if he wants to unmute himself and turn on his video.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can't see you though, Mr. Thiessen.
All right, let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. I think.
Yeah, we can see you now.
All right, awesome.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Thiessen. Welcome.
Okay, sorry, it's Tyson.
Tyson, Mr. Tyson.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just like Mike Tyson, but it's the Dutch version.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I apologize because number one, I don't have a pink shirt. I don't have a poem or a PowerPoint presentation. But again, thank you very much for allowing me to speak with everybody tonight. Deb Doherty, thank you to you for joining, myself and several neighbors here for a walk of the Cranberry Golf Course yesterday, 2.5 hours that we spent walking with, it was a beautiful day, but anyways, I represent, informally, the 2,700 people that have signed our petition. Hopefully you guys all have that. Can you acknowledge that you've received that? No?
We received the email this afternoon. Yes.
Yeah, I sent you an email of the names. So we have 2,700 I'm going to say Collingwood residents, but there may be a few that are visitors in that list that are very much opposed to clear cutting, 18 acres of forest starting in March when significant issues haven't been addressed yet. So we're hoping that the town will listen and will delay that vote. That's really what it's all about. Delay that vote until those issues, those two very significant issues from our side, are addressed. And I got to say that I haven't met Beth Allen, but I could use her PowerPoint presentation right now because it covered everything. The first thing is, we look at the Cranberry Golf Course. We all love it. It was a beautiful course, and it's starting to get ugly. So if you walk along some of those McPherson earlier phases, it's an ugly course because you see townhomes right on the edge of the fairway. And that's wrong. That's wrong for golfers. It's wrong for nature lovers. It's wrong for nature. And it's wrong for Collingwood. And we got to fix it. If I turn back time, the older developments all had a buffer, all had a tree buffer, a mature tree buffer. So Beth Ellen had the 30-foot wide buffer of trees in her presentation. I couldn't agree, more. That's so important for the town of Collingwood, for everyone. So, that should be fixed on the previous phases, and it should certainly be addressed before a single tree is taken down in the 18 acres between fairways 7, 5, and 4. Now, it's not, I got to say, it's not McPherson's fault because the owner of the golf course severed all of those trees between his fairways, which is wrong. The town of Collingwood shouldn't have allowed that. I don't know when that was. It was probably, 15 years ago for all I know. But it shouldn't have been allowed because it destroys the beauty of the golf course. That Cranberry Golf Course, is wonderful. They allow us to use the cart paths and the trails and to walk it when the golf course is closed. So in the winter months. And there's a ton of people, many of them have signed that petition that walked that golf course, and Councillor Doherty walked it yesterday for 2.5 hours. So we don't want to lose that. Collingwood doesn't want to lose that. So that's one thing. It's not about a view. It's about, you guys taking the time, walk on the earlier McPherson phases, particularly, I picked two fairways, fairway 12 and 14, and you see nothing. There is nothing. There's zero buffer there between a whole bunch of decks and barbecues in the summer. There'll be barbecues out there, and the golf course, the fairway. There's nothing. There's not a single tree between them. That's wrong. That's wrong for Collingwood. That's wrong for the animals. That's wrong for the birds. That's wrong for everybody. The older developments kept that buffer in place, and maybe it was the golf course who did that because it was their land. But if you look at the links, I'm going to concentrate on the Cranberry West developments, the 5 links condo boards, the Briarwood ones. There's a buffer between the development and the golf course. It was golf course property for the most part, but there is a buffer there. It's solid, mature trees, which is beautiful. That's the way to do it. That's the way to maintain the beauty and have a balance between development and nature. So we know that land was severed and it was bought by McPherson with the understanding that they could develop on it, but they shouldn't clear cut, all 18 acres and build every square foot within that 18-acre envelope. They should leave a buffer to the golf course. Okay, the second, so until that issue is resolved, and I know they say stuff like, well, we'll work with the town planners and we'll replant some trees, but sorry, you know, we look at the earlier phases and we look at Fairway 12 and 14, and I'm sure there's other ones that are as bad or worse, and there's nothing there, and we don't want to see the same thing done on fairways 4, 5, and 7. So that's one issue, major issue. Let's go on to the Atoka Trail. I think people finally understand that the Atoka Trail, which is our link from Cranberry West, from that bus turnaround to the Georgian Trail, it's on McPherson land. If McPherson wanted to, they could park their construction equipment right on that trail and eliminate it. Yeah, we understand that. It's their land. The trail runs right through their subdivision. It needs to be relocated for them to develop. Yeah, we understand that. So they proposed a trail to the east, coming off of, I'm going to call it Cranberry Trail East, the road, which isn't finished yet, but they proposed moving the trail to the east, the Atoka Trail to the east. So, but there's a ton of people, and I'm going to say 2,700 of them signed a petition that use that trail every day. So we can't lose that trail. We can't lose that connection to the Georgian Trail for a day. So have the alternative trail, you know, in place first, and it should be treed. We don't want a naked sidewalk or gravel walkway with no trees. Have it treed that the bikes can use, that the skiers can use, that the snowshoers can use, that the dog walkers can use, all of that. And I'm gonna add one more because it was a very good suggestion from one of the neighbors here. Because that trail has moved so far to the east, make sure that it's got adequate parking, because a lot of people like driving and parking somewhere to take the Georgian Trail. So make sure that it's got legal parking to access the trail. And then give the people of Silver Glen, which is a large new development, and Briarwood, because they're losing the Atoka, give them access to the Georgian Trail on the east side of hole number 6. It's very, very short, and a lot of people use it already, but during the golfing season, the golf course can't allow people to walk on the golf course, so it needs to be tweaked a little bit. So that should be done as well before a single tree is cut in that 18 acres. All three of those things should be done. The two trails, the one east that McPherson is showing on their site plan, although it needs to be treed. The one west of hole number 6 for the residents, I'm going to say for the residents of Briarwood and Silver Glen, although anybody can use it as long as they don't bring a car. So if they walk to it, that's fine. They got used to it. And revise that site plan so that it's got a 30-foot width of buffer to the golf course, so that we don't lose the beauty of the golf course. And personally, I would add another one, which is go back to the earlier phases of that McPherson has built and plant some frickin' trees. And you don't have to plant little 3-foot saplings. Plant 10, 12 footers. You know, do the right thing. And if McPherson wouldn't do it or won't do it, then the town should do it. Because that's what Collingwood needs. Keep that golf course beautiful. Don't make it naked like 12 and 14. So long story short, please delay this vote. There's no reason why the town has to rush into this. Don't start tearing these 18 acres out in March. Leave it for the fall. Leave it till after nesting season and use the time between now and the fall to take care of all of the broken things that we see already, like the lack of trails to replace the Atoka, and like the lack of trees on fairways 12 and 14.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
Yeah,
that's your 10 minutes. So
yep,
it's a good place to leave off. And I think you gave us a good airing of your views there. Councilor, are there any questions for Mr. Tyson? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time tonight, Bob, and for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Council, that brings us to our consent agenda. And the motion is, be it resolved that Council hear and receive the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are that of the authors and not verified or approved as being correct. There are 3 items on the agenda tonight. 8.1, Proclamation International Women's Day, March 8, 2021. 8.2, County of Simcoe, Notice of Adoption, Official Plan Amendment 6, Age-Friendly Community. And 8.3, various residents' comments regarding Report P 2021-4, Application for Permit to Destroy Trees, Blue Fairways, Phases 5 and 6, Cranberry Trail. I'll first look for a mover and seconder to receive the agenda, Councillor Berman and Councillor Jeffrey. So all in favor? That is passed. Are there any items to be pulled tonight, Council? Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I was just waiting a quick sec to see if anyone was going to pull it, and that's why don't we take a moment to just further on the International Women's Day, which is contained in this consent agenda, and just remind everybody, as Councillor Jeffrey has before, that we do have a virtual event coming up on the 8th, and that tickets are free, and this is put on by our town and the wonderful committee, and that you can get those tickets through, best I know it, through Experience Collingwood as well as the town website. And there's also opportunity to support our local women's shelter, My Friend's House. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod.
Sorry about that. Just to build on Councillor Comey's point, I would point out, however, that the boodle bag that is coming for some people with that tickets are sold out. I think I got the last one. I got a notice today.
All right. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I did receive a note this afternoon. They'd added another 20. So if the second 20 will go quickly, and it may well have, but I think there was another 20 released this afternoon.
Good, thank you for that. All right, Council, that brings us then to item 9.1, Standing Committee Report. And the motion is, be it resolved that Council receive the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee Report from its meeting held February 8, 2021, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. First item, P 2021-2, 222 Huron Ontario Street, conditional site plan approval, Sporting Life, file number D111720. The recommendation is that the site plan be approved for the proposed Sporting Life retail commercial establishment subject to the various conditions. And the second item is PW 2021-2, 2020 annual water compliance report. The recommendation is to direct staff to post the 2020 annual water compliance report on the town's website by February 28, 2021. These items both passed unanimously at the standing committee meeting, so unless you want to pull them for a change in direction, I'm first going to call the vote to approve them. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you. Are there any of those 2 items that Council wishes to pull or speak to just by way of comment? Seeing none, I do want to congratulate our water staff department for the exceptional work, 100% compliance for the 3rd year running, and that is a fantastic achievement, so please keep up the great work. And that brings us to item 9.2, staff reports, and these are reports that were not unanimously approved by the standing committee. And 9.2.1 is P 2021-4 application for permit to destroy trees, Blue Fairway phases 5 and 6, Cranberry Trail. What I think I'll do before I read it in is first turn it over to staff for the presentation, and then I will read in the resolution. Director Farr, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, members of the public. This is a presentation on the tree cutting permit request by McPherson Builders for the lands known as Blue Fairway Phase 5 and 6. So in this presentation, I'm going to provide a brief overview of some of the matters that were raised at Development and Operations Committee, and I'm going to provide an update on things that have happened since that meeting. Next slide, please. So the subject lands are located about midway along the stretch of Cranberry Trail, at the terminus of Cranberry Trail East and the terminus of Cranberry Trail West, which are portions of roadway that are intended to be joined ultimately. And it's across a portion of these lands that are owned by McPherson Builders. These lands include the existing Cranberry Atoka Trail, as you can see, delineated in orange on the drawing. Please. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the extended tree removal, it mirrors the forested cover that you see in the previous images. This is kind of a sketch that delineates the extent of the area. Next slide, please. The intent is to facilitate tree removals for 249 unit development. It's a subject of a site plan application file D11-1619. Next slide, please. So the way that this item came to the town was by way of a request from the developer. The tree cutting bylaw that the town has in place now indicates that approvals for tree permits shall not be issued by the town, where among other things, there's an application for site plan approval related to lands on which the tree is located that has been submitted to municipality and has not received final approval. Otherwise, staff have the authority to issue permits. So in this case, staff did not have that authority. The bylaw includes an appeal mechanism to council. In this case, due to timing, staff brought the request directly to council. The applicant provided an application submission for council's direct consideration. As relates this application, town staff have consulted with the town solicitor, who's advised that the town should consider recommendation changes in its proposed recommendations that address the mechanics of the bylaw, and the fact that the recommendations in front of council tonight call for a delegation of the approval to the director of planning and development services based on conditions that are set out in the recommendations. Otherwise, if staff had been able to, staff would have included the full scope of the permanent approval in the recommendation tonight by way of a development agreement. And as it happens, we have been able to finalize that development agreement for your consideration. So these amendments to the recommendation had to be made. Next slide, please. So the status of this file is we're awaiting a third submission on a site plan application. Ecological study was completed and peer reviewed as part of the permit application to remove the trees. The lands are designated medium density and they're zoned residential and our R3 zoning designation. I'll speak further to that later. They form part of a draft plan approved subdivision that includes a master subdivision agreement. The owners provided a timeline, and I'll review that in a moment, that indicates that if tree removals are delayed past April 15, which is the beginning of the bird breeding season restrictions, that they would have to wait till the end of that restrictive period to begin site preparation activities, which would result in a delay to the delivery of units. The owner has indicated that they're prepared to enter a pre-development agreement that would include performance requirements and securities to address various matters. Next slide, please. So this is the timeline that I mentioned. I think I misspoke there. It's not a 2-year delay, it's a 1-year delay. But if the trees are cleared before April 2021, then the targeted closing date for the delivery of housing would be August 2022. Whereas if the trees were cleared after April 2021, which would be at the end of the bird breeding season, the delivery of units will be delayed until May 2023. Next slide, please. So this is an overlay of the proposed development on the air photo. And in this slide, you can see the proposed new trail location, which is located at the east end of the development. You can see it denoted on the right-hand side of the site plan. And it runs from the current location of the connecting link at the Georgian Trail. Instead of traversing the site, it runs more directly to Cranberry Trail East along the periphery of the development. Next slide, please. So this slide is was supposed to be animated, so this would have been more dynamic had it animated. In any case, this just shows you another indication of the layout of the subdivision relative to the adjacent site. Next slide, please. So an update since we went to Development and Operations Committee is that residents have come forward with a number of issues, some of which you've heard this evening, including a request for buffering to be imposed, a 30-foot buffer around the periphery of this development, that there's been significant concern about trail access, including the timing of the trail, and in some instances, the location. There are also some questions around process and timing and some additional other issues that relate to developer performance with respect to closings and deficiencies in the development and the buildings themselves. In this case, I cannot speak to those issues in the context of this proposal for tree removals. I do want to speak briefly to process and timing. As I indicated, the manner in which the application came to staff was through the tree bylaw provisions that do provide a mechanism for appeal where there's a staff refusal. Staff are prohibited from issuing a permit in this case, and as such interpreted the provisions of the bylaw to allow that appeal mechanism. As I indicated earlier, in consultation with the town solicitor, out of an abundance of caution, there have been some modifications made to the proposed recommendations to reflect that, and also the mechanics of the bylaw, which at this time would require, rather than council approving the permit directly, delegating that authority to the director position in order to finalize the agreement. So those have resulted in changes to the recommendations. We've also received a draft development agreement from the builder addressing some of the performance requirements and detailing information we didn't have previously, which was the provision of a $250,000 security. I'll speak to the details with regard to that in a second. So we amended the report to also include some additional content that we thought was important for council to have in evaluating this application. And that was the peer review of the submission provided by the applicant regarding the tree removals. And that included a study assessing the quality of the woodland in this area and its ecological significance. That resulted in revised conditions, and those are what you see in the recommendation that is on the agenda this evening. But as I indicated, we made some additional revised conditions to provide additional details on some additional things that the builder has agreed to include as part of their proposal in recognition of resident concerns, and also some changes as a result of the advice from the town solicitor. Next slide, please. So I wanted to speak briefly to the land use permissions on these lands because among the issues raised by the residents have been questions about that. The official plan designates these lands as residential, and you can see that in the schedule excerpt at the top of the slide. And below you can see the shaded color green, which is the medium density designation. The official plan medium density designation sets out the range of permitted units per hectare that are allowed in this designation, and the range is from 20 to 55 units. And this, the proposed development falls within that range. Next slide, please. The property is also zoned R3, which is the town's medium density zone. The proposed layout in this development follows something known as, it's a kind of classification, subclassification of use called group or cluster dwellings. So in this zone, you'll see townhouses, apartments, and there's this group or cluster zone. And the group or cluster zone has a specific setbacks. Effectively, what it does is it creates an envelope within which development can occur. This is in some ways a unique zone. In other municipalities, they might have a more prescriptive townhouse zone that sets out minimum unit widths and various different provisions. In any case, the group or cluster zone provisions are fairly generic in nature. I should mention that when the property is zoned this manner, there would typically be consideration for possible environmental studies, but this zoning has been in effect for quite a while, and that would have been undertaken at the time that the zoning was contemplated. These lands were also cut out of the golf course. There has been some discussion about how the golf course can effectively coexist with these lands, and one of the primary sort of tools for determining that is something called golf spray analysis. Golf spray analysis is an assessment of the statistical likelihood of a golf ball being shot within a range from a tee. And so this area has been heavily studied from a golf spray analysis standpoint, and the review of the site plan is also subject to ensuring that golf spray analysis requirements have been met. And often with golf spray analysis, there's mitigation buffers to ensure that trees don't, or that golf balls don't stray off course. So any of those plantings or vegetation that would need to be in place to ensure that the two uses could coexist is required to be addressed through that. Next slide, please. So just back to the draft development agreement. The draft development agreement includes a security of $250,000. And that security is in place to address a concern that's been articulated by council in the past. That concern is that an approval would be issued and then the development would not be implemented and the site would be bereft of trees for a prolonged period. So this commitment that's been made in the draft development agreement by the builder is that the infrastructure works would be complete on the site by February 22, 2022. And that if they weren't completed at that time, that the town would be able, subject to the provisions in the agreement, to draw down on those securities to replant either on this site or on another site, and or construct a trail if there was trail disruption. So that was what our draft development agreement looked like. We've since been able to make additions to this agreement, but this draft contemplated completion of a permanent trail by February 22, 2022, and include the associated provisions. Next slide, please. So as I said, there's been quite a bit of resident comment, and as a result of the resident comments and concerns, we did include the additional information on peer review requirements surrounding the tree removals in the report. But we also embedded some commitments that had been made by the developer, and those commitments were to enhanced landscaping on the western side of this development. There is a fairway in between the Briarwood condominium and this site, which is anywhere from about 100 meters wide to narrowing down to about 25 meters. And you'll see that again on the map when it comes up in a minute. And additionally, there had been this concern about the availability of the trail and the trail connection. So the developer has committed to a temporary trail to be constructed as soon as site servicing works began. And those have been added into the recommendations. Additionally, the developer would be committing to carry those requirements in this pre-development agreement to the site plan agreement. There's a commentary in the report that speaks to the need to ensure that the adjacent property owner, the owner of the golf course, is satisfied with any boundary tree removals or any grading that might occur on their property. If there was any conflict in the removal of that vegetation with, for example, the golf spray analysis, or if there was a concern from that property owner about that vegetation removal, then that would require a revision to the tree removal application. So the recommendation includes a recommendation that if those revisions were required, that the applicant would resubmit the proposed extent of the tree removals, and then council would delegate to the director of planning the approval for that tree removal permit, subject to all the conditions and content in this report. Next slide, please. So this is just sort of for the record here for the clerk and for council. This is the revised set of recommendations associated with this, and the clerk will have this available for reference later. Next slide, please. So I wanted to draw council's attention to this schedule from the official plan. This schedule identifies the rough location of the trail connection that's contemplated across these lands. And it's relatively close in proximity to the proposed location that's set out in the site plan application. Next slide, please. So the next steps would be if council was to approve the recommendations in the report as amended, then we would confirm the implementation details. So that would be to finalize the development agreement in accordance with the content of the recommendations, receive the associated securities, and the commitments would be captured in the agreement, and then the permit would be issued. Except under the circumstances where I indicated earlier, where if there's a conflict with off-site vegetation removal or boundary tree removals. And I believe that concludes my presentation, and I'm pleased to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director Farr. I think what I'll do is read in the recommendation, and then we can ask questions. So be it resolved that staff report P 2021-4 application for permit to destroy trees, Blue Fairways, Fairway Phase 5 and 6 Cranberry Trail be received, and that council suspend the provisions of Tree Preservation and Protection Bylaw number 2012-84 in relation to the McPherson Builders Cranberry Trail tree permit application for Blue Fairway Phase 5 and 6. And that council authorize the issuance of a permit to destroy trees, McPherson Builders Cranberry Limited, for the vacant lands currently the subject of site plan application D111619, located at the terminus of Cranberry Trail East in the town of Collingwood, subject to the following conditions to be fulfilled to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services. 1, resolution of matters identified by staff and second submission site plan review comments for the subject lands dated October 2020. 2, satisfaction of town landscape architect peer review comments on the application for a permit to destroy trees, Appendix C. 3, provision by McPherson Builders, round bracket Cranberry Limited, of $250,000 in securities to be drawn upon at the discretion of the Director of Planning Services for related compensatory costs, including but not limited to tree replanting and or restoration of a temporary trail connection across the subject lands from Cranberry Trail to Georgian Trail if the owner fails to meet the performance requirements set out in the associated pre-development agreement. 4, the owner enter into pre-development agreements that sets out the performance requirements related to various commitments and terms under which securities may be drawn, including but not limited to A, the timing of complete installation of sewer infrastructure be undertaken by or before February 22, 2022. B, the temporary trail connection be constructed at the proposed location on the eastern extent of the subject lands at the outset of site servicing operations, where interruption to trail connection between Cranberry Trail and Georgian Trail is minimized to the greatest extent possible. C, the permanent trail connection be established by February 20, 2022. And D, the enhanced tree plantings comprised of an increased number of trees and species be planted and secured on the west side of the project, subject to related provisions and extensions where adequate performance has been demonstrated as applicable. And further, that the owner agrees to include within the forthcoming site plan agreement for Blue Fairway 5 and 6 site plan file D111619, a requirement that the McPherson Builders round bracket Cranberry Limited incorporate and agree to all related matters addressed in the aforementioned pre-development agreement. And further, that in the event that boundary tree removals and or off-site grading resulting in tree removals cannot be supported, the applicant submit a revised permit application that the Director of Planning Services be authorized to evaluate and issue the related permit subject to recommendations in report 2021-4, the analysis contained therein, and to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? I have a request to speak, and I've got you on my list, Deputy Mayor, but first I'm going to get this on the floor. So Councillor McLeod and Deputy Mayor Hall, and go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I raised my card to simply get it on the table, but I'd like to, if I may, through you to staff, refer this item in its entirety back through staff to our legal department, or our solicitors, I guess I should say, zeroing in on 2 items, and it comes right from, I guess, the outset, and it's the word suspend. And it's in the context or in relation to bylaw 2012-084. And I'm simply looking to get clarification from our solicitor that the process as it relates to the bylaw has been properly followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Berman, thank you. This is a referral back to staff for clarification on the appropriate process. And I understand the Deputy Mayor's concerns. It is a referral, so there is no debate on the topic. With that being said, then I will call the vote in favor of referring this back to staff for clarification on the proper process, whether it is under the bylaw or outside the bylaw. And with that, I will call the vote then. All in favor? Opposed? Duly noted, and that referral is carried. So that takes us then to item 9.2.2. Which is P2021-5 extension of draft approval of plan of subdivision Bridgewater Preserve at Georgian Bay. And Councillor Hamlin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a question of procedure. I totally understand this matter that we've just heard Director Farr and our residents speak on has been deferred back to staff for a specific reason. The questions we have of Director Farr, with respect to his presentation, how will those be dealt with?
We've referred it back for further information on this particular item of the process that we're implementing. And so you will have an opportunity to ask those questions when we come back to this item, when staff reports back to council with the clarification on this particular item, because I think it may also impact on the questions and discussion that we have at that time.
Thank you.
So we need a mover and a seconder then for 9.2.2, moved by Councillor Jeffrey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. And I will pass the baton to Director Farr.
Thank you. Is there a presentation there on this file?
I'm not sure.
Through the chair, I wasn't provided with one.
Okay, well, that's fine. So this item was brought to Development and Operations Committee. It deals with the lands on Highway 26 near Princeton Shores. And this is a draft plan of subdivision approval extension that contemplates the development of 320 odd townhouse units in a group or cluster designation, an R3 designation. This subdivision has been extended a number of times. In this case, the staff are recommending the 4-month extension to allow for some more detailed review of the existing conditions, primarily in the context of the concurrent rezoning application that's been filed on the property. A rezoning application has been filed on these lands that would rationalize the current zoning and allow for an increase in the units from 300 odd townhouses up into the 600 unit range. That number of units would fall within the medium density designation that currently applies to the property. And the applicant has filed a revision to the conditions of draft plan approval. As I indicated, because of these 3 different pieces, because of the complexity of the file, and frankly, because of the lack of resources relative to what all is going on in the community right now, we were recommending to committee and then to council that we be given a measure of more time to follow up with the proponent on their zoning bylaw amendment application and better understand their intent with respect to these lands, and also review the current conditions and potential future conditions in their entirety in order to provide the most well-rounded, well-considered recommendation to council on this matter.
Thank you, Adam. So I'll read the recommendation. We'll get it on the floor. That staff report P2021-5 extension of draft approval for plan of subdivision Bridgewater Preserve at Georgian Bay be received, and that council extends the draft approval for the proposed Bridgewater Plan of Subdivision for a further 4 months to June 29, 2021. And the council directs staff to continue their review of the draft approval and bring forward a further recommendation report dealing with the development proposal prior to the June 29, 2021 lapse date. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Berman, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Questions or comments, council? Go ahead, Councillor Dory, and then Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just speak to the motion. During standing committee, I did support this motion, but upon further consideration, I have changed my mind and I will not be supporting this proposal. The reason being that of all the development applications that we have in front of us, they should be subject to the most up-to-date, the most stringent planning policies, and not be based on a plan that was approved 14 years ago, albeit via OMB decision, and has sat on a shelf. Times change and climate changes. Water levels are at record high. Climate change mitigation science has changed and has put increased value on green spaces and on wetlands for stormwater absorption and carbon sequestration. The list of species of concern or at risk has grown, and at least 3 of them are known to inhabit the Silver Creek wetlands. Of all the proposed developments under consideration by this municipality, none have more potential ecological, social, and health implications than this one. Today, more than ever before, we must consider these merits along with just the planning merits. All of our development applications should have a best before date, and presently they do not. We are fortunate in that we are on the eve of the release of a new official plan that will incorporate a year's worth of input from the public, staff, and council. So I ask, why should we grant this approval against standards that are established under an outdated official plan? It's anticipated that the official plan review will also address matters that will serve to protect the town's interest better, such as expirations for draft plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dory. Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, I did not support this at the committee, and I continue to not support it. I will not repeat, but I do endorse the comments of Councillor Doherty this evening. I think every draft plan needs a sunset date, as one of our deputants said at the committee. And this one is the most egregious in our portfolio, so to speak. There's been continual extensions of draft plan approval for well over 14 years. And there is nothing compelling about this that we should keep extending approval while the landowner tries to figure out what it is that's going to happen on this property. So I will not be supporting an extension of draft plan approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. Council, any other questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. That takes us to item 9.3, motions. This is your motion, Deputy Mayor, and I think there's updated wording. I'll read that in for you, Deputy Mayor, and then you can speak to your motion. So it's moved by Deputy Mayor I'll ask for a seconder once I've read it in. Be it resolved that the standing committee requests staff to review costs to replace the existing lights at Hamilton Drain with the traditional lights as installed at High Street and Chamberlain Crescent, and the potential cost to decommission and redeploy the existing lights to a more residential environment, reporting back to the Development and Operations Standing Committee. And we need to insert a date at that point. And further, that given the current system was approved by the MTO, that an invitation be sent to the ministry to visit the current installation to review their approved design in the context of concerns raised by the residents of the town of Collingwood. Councillor Jeffrey is seconding it. So Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak now?
Thank you. I'll be brief because I think it's self-explanatory. Before I make my comments, I will though look to the CAO to perhaps provide the date to which she feels best that staff could report back to Development and Operations. I would then further state that for those watching along, that it starts by stating that the standing committee, and just for a matter of process, so we're at council this evening, but the notice of motion was put forward at Development and Operations. The report will come back to that particular committee, and if it sees fit at that committee to then move something forward, that committee will do so for at that time. I think that a number of my colleagues around the table have heard from a period of time and from a wide-ranging swath of residents who either use the particular crosswalk or drive through that particular crosswalk as it relates to the operation, the concerns as it relates to visibility, et cetera. And I won't go into them in detail because I raised some concerns at Development and Operations, but the rationale of the request as part of the second part of the motion to invite the MTO is really to say to staff that I understand that the previous council, and I applaud the previous council for making a request and approving the budget to put in a crosswalk and a lights fixture there, and that staff using MTO guidelines worked within those parameters and installed what is there today. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a transportation expert, but when I view and when I see what's happening there, I have some concerns, and some of them seem to be just common sense in terms of the physical layout, the use of amber versus red, the fact that we don't actually require vehicles to come to a complete stop, et cetera. And therefore, I think that it behooves the MTO in approving such a design that they come and actually take a look at the physical design in its use, and they themselves then can come to their own conclusions as to whether or not their engineering is correct. As I state, I'm not an expert, but when I look at it, I see some flaws that I think that they should take a look at. So all I'm asking tonight, I'm not asking for any 8 around the table to come to a final conclusion. I'm just asking for further information. The information is in the request of costs so that we can then look as a council and say, is the cost associated with replacing these particular light fixtures worth it within the budget that we have to work with? Could the light fixtures that are currently there be redeployed elsewhere to better use, and at what cost? And once we have that information, I think then we can make a final determination as to the outcome of this particular crosswalk. And I hope that it receives full support, and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll look to CAO Skinner for the date or potential date.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Deputy Mayor Hull. Yes, I had a good conversation with Director Slama and Manager Velick today. And the date we would propose is no later than September. We're hoping it will be a bit earlier, but it does have some dependency on how fast the new technician can get up to speed. That thank you very much. Council had endorsed for that type of work in this year's budget. And while I'm speaking, I'll just mention that I did also talk with 2 of the departments at MTO since this draft motion came forward, being the highway standards and the traffic office, and they indicated a willingness to just to look at our experiences, whether they come physically or maybe just look on the aerial photos and discuss our experiences with us. And also had indicated there are some flexibilities in the warrants to potentially move towards something like what is suggested in this draft motion. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Skinner. So I've put in for an insertion of the date by September 2021. And then I had Councillor Jeffrey and then Councillor Hamlin. Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So I agree with everything that the Deputy Mayor said. My only question is, what model of crosswalk equipment is scheduled for Niagara and the Parkway?
Do we have Director Slama available? Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, Worship. That is a signalized crosswalk.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all. I just wanted to make sure we weren't having to investigate another one. That was great.
That's correct. No,
thank you.
This is a signalized one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm, very supportive of this matter, and I just wanted to add a couple of facts, which was I got an email from a resident on February 13th, and I just want to tell you what it said. He saw an article in the paper about this issue coming forward, and he said, we use that crossing every day, and the crosswalk signals are not stopping traffic. I think in many cases, because the drivers don't see them. We've had a couple of close calls there. You wait for one direction to stop so you can start across, and the other direction if traffic does not. Something really needs to be done about this. Well, the very next day, the Sunday, my husband and I were in our car sitting at that stop for a person to cross at that crosswalk heading towards Poplar. And as the person was crossing, two vehicles in a row going northbound barreled through the crosswalk and, totally oblivious to the person crossing. Us, in fact, stopped it obviously in the middle of the road and the lights going. So I just, I had a couple thoughts. One is, to the extent staff can move up the looking at this, I think it would be helpful. And secondly, I'm so worried that perhaps having a crosswalk there is more dangerous than having none because the pedestrians are thinking they've got a safe way to cross, but the cars aren't stopping. So, in that regard, all I can do is really leave it with staff to give some consideration to whether that crosswalk should be removed pending resolution of it. But otherwise, I'm in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. I saw Sonia CAO Skinner nodding her head, so I think she's taken your point. And Councillor McLeod, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, following up on Councillor Jeffrey's question regarding what's going in at Niagara, and the wording of the motion is traditional lights, although I know there was an amendment and I don't have it right in front of me. Are we basically saying the ones that is being requested to be looked at are like the ones at High and Chamberlain, and that is also what we're thinking about or what we're hoping for on Niagara and 26?
Deputy Mayor, you want to answer that?
Well, I think through you to Director Slama, but if I understand correctly, what we passed in the budget to be installed on Niagara and the Parkway is a traditional signalized light with red, green, and amber, and a flashing crosswalk sign for pedestrian use. And that is similar to what's installed at Chamberlain and High.
Yes, through the mayor, that is correct.
Great. So all these three are going to be the same if this comes to pass.
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Comey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, how exciting is it that our entire council is talking about crosswalks? This is awesome. This is fantastic. I want to, through you, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank the Deputy Mayor who was good enough to take some rather intense phone calls from me while I've hung out at the crosswalk watching those transport trucks go by. And through you, I want to thank Director Slama and Manager Velik, who probably have a very special email file just to all the emails we forward along from residents having a myriad of concerns about crossing here have been spoken. But I also would like, this is a great opportunity to thank Miss Jennifer Parker, who I thought of because of Councillor Hamlin's comments about people using the crosswalk, who has spent time at the crosswalk showing our school children the right way to go across. And a very special thank you to our bylaw, who came out immediately when it was down for several weeks, and our local OPP and CAO Skinner, and the entire town gets behind this crosswalk in general. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. And so thank you, Deputy Mayor, for keeping this in the forefront, and to all of staff for bearing with us as we try to find the right solution.
Thank you. Any other comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. This brings us to item 10, at 10.1, development of legislation strengthening the definition of hate speech. Director Culver's is going to join us. Dean, do you want to do your presentation, then I'll read it in, or would you like me to read it in first?
You're the mayor, so whichever you choose, it's fine.
Well, why don't I read it in? I'll give us context to the discussion.
Sure.
Whereas Canadians generally recognize the strength of community that is derived from embracing and appreciating all community members, regardless of ethnic origin, gender, and sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or faith, and in accordance with statements made by the federal government, individual provinces, and the United Nations, that hate speech has no place in an inclusive society that seeks to empower its constituents. Whereas it is widely recognized that symbols can have a powerful and profound effect on the psychology and well-being of community members, therefore be it resolved that FCM petition the Canadian government to build on Parliament's 2019 report, Taking Action to End Online Hate, and engage in the development of legislation that would clarify and strengthen the definition of hate speech, including explicit recognition of the psychological harm that can be caused by hate symbols, and work with all levels of the government in addressing the root causes of hate speech. Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you. And thank you for the time, Mr. Mayor. That allowed me to figure out how to share my screen. So I'm going to do that really quickly. I think, anyway. Let me know if you can see this. Is that visible? There. Can you see a slide? Perfect. Okay. So I thought it really quickly. I just take us back. I know everybody is fairly intimately aware of this time frame, but this stems back to some concerns raised by residents back in June of 2020, to which council gave direction, and we were able to respond with a staff report, which indicated, at least as part of the report, that we should access FCM as a lobby group to help us communicate with the federal government and seek some change to legislation that would help us to manage symbols of hate expressions in the community and hate symbols. So what's happened, back to that report, we were unable to, because I think the deadline for the to meet the last board meeting of 2020 was around July 11th. We were too late to submit to FCM after the July 29 report. So the next opportunity to meet to provide a resolution to the board of FCM is March 18th. So we've done that. We submitted it before January 11th. And then the next part of the process is the FCM staff actually provides some feedback, both looking at the resolution as pertains to FCM policy, but also with their own insights and research into the matter at hand. So actually last week I was contacted by FCM staff who provided actually some really critical insight into what's going on at the federal level at Parliament.
it was encouraging because it talks to the point that the federal government is addressing or looking to address definition of hate speech. But their focus is a little bit towards what's happening online. And again, I won't speculate further because I don't know enough, but it's encouraging at least that we are talking at least in the same realm. We do believe there's still validity for pursuing and carrying forward a resolution through FCM. The FCM staff provided some guidance and some recommendations, which you see before you in the recommendation that Mayor Saunderson just read. And with your approval, this will go to the FCM board on March 18th. If adopted by the FCM board, it will form part of their policy position and be a policy pursuit for the next 3 years for FCM. So I'm happy to take any questions, but hopefully that little background recap and explanation helps.
Thank you, Dean. First, I'll just get a mover and a seconder to get this motion on the floor. A move by Councillor Hamlin, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Questions or comments, Council? Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Culver. This is fantastic. I like the wording of the motion. My question is, in your discussions with FCM staff, did you have the sense that if the board adopted this, that FCM would then have the ability to work with the federal government on this legislation, which, as you indicated, is addressing online hate, to try and broaden that particular piece of legislation to encompass the symbol issue that we've had in our community?
Dean?
So through you, Mayor, I think that's the intent of the resolution, but I'll defer to Councillor Jeffrey, who has experience at the board level and will probably explain better than I can.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, through to Councillor Hamlin. The process that Dean showed you kind of stopped at the board approval, but what happens is our policy advisors at FCM cannot move forward with a file unless the board approves it. So once the board approves it, that wording that it becomes part of our policy means that these outstanding policy people will be pursuing the federal government with this. And by the time that they've spent with us and getting the wording just right, I'm assuming they've worked toward what we call a category category A concurrence, which and I see no reason with FCM's current policies that are already in place that they're working on in other ways that this would not fit into ours. So I think it'll be very supportable, but all staff needs is the board support, and then they start engaging with the right ministers and the right highly placed staffing.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Hamlin.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And if I could have a follow-up through you, Mayor Saunderson, to Councillor Jeffrey, would there be an opportunity for feedback to our council as the FCM process unfolds?
I'll be able to report to council immediately after the board meeting because I will be part of that vote. And I have explained to Director Culver through you, Mayor Saunderson, that part of the process is quite often they look to a board member who is a member of council of a sponsoring municipality. And so I've asked him to make sure that he has me prepared with his top 3 key points for me to make at the board, and I will do so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, and thank you to Director Culver for your slide and your explanation. I am in favor of the added wording, but through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Jeffrey, who will be attending the meeting, I just do want to pick up on what Councillor Hamlin said, that really what came before our community wasn't explicitly a concern based out of online hate. although I'm sure this council agrees that's incredibly concerning. We even have members of our own community who are targeted through online hate groups. So I fully support the notion of their importance, but really this entire petition and what came before us started with concern over the flying of a Confederate flag. And I just don't want that to be lost or diluted. So I'm hoping that with you being present at the table and being, acutely aware of the staff report and our community's concerns, that in itself is not lost, that we still have this as an outstanding, painful issue in our community that's still, last I checked, is still flying. And it's incredibly hurtful to our entire community. So I look forward to hearing back from you on that. And I hope that message isn't lost when it gets before the board. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey, any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So through you to Councillor Comey, for sure that will not be lost, which was my point in having our director, Director Culver, make sure that I had the speaking notes they want me to touch on in terms of that. And I believe their wording has covered that off. And it is quite beneficial to be piggybacking on something that is already happening at the federal level. This will make it much easier. So quite prepared to cover that off there. And actually, I didn't wait for this opportunity. I had the chance to have some work with another minister, and I brought up some of our problems, particularly with the signage at the corner of Huron and Hurontario. And part of her speech had been empowering municipalities, and I told her in my question that I was glad to hear that they wanted to empower municipalities, that we can't manage within it with the tools we have right now. And I brought up that specific example. So that advocacy has already started.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to offer my my thanks to for the hard work that Acting Executive Director Culver has put into this file. He really took the bit and ran with this, and even this past weekend, I may have shared this with a couple of my colleagues. There have been stories from other municipalities where this conversation has taken place and went a different way, and I'm just so pleased that every time this discussion comes to this council, it's almost always it's always been a unanimous vote for diversity, inclusion, and love and peace. And I'm really pleased to see that, and I'm really pleased to see the work that our staff has done and is willing to do. Didn't have to be ordered to do it, and thank you.
And certainly add to that the work with the Diversity Collective. It's been extremely productive. And thank you to all of those members again for their input. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. I too would echo the comments of my colleagues who have spoken to this matter. I too would also specifically applaud the work of Executive Director Culver. And it was nice to kick off the meeting tonight with Marcia Alderson speaking as a member of the new inclusive group that's been put together. And if you haven't had a chance, she referenced the articles that have been published in Collingwood today. And I think Jessica Owens has done an excellent job in providing a sense of who the organization or who this committee is represented by, their backgrounds, both those who have been generational within our community or those who are perhaps more recent, not only to the community, but to the country from places like Sri Lanka, for example. I just would want to pass along a comment through you to our chair at FCM. And it is sort of along the lines of Councillor Hamlin and Councillor Comey. As Councillor Comey was speaking, I put up my fingers like that, and I apologize. I wasn't being rude. What I was putting my fingers up was the fact that there are two flags that still fly in this community, not one. There's been a lot of attention paid to one, but there are two. And the comment that I would just make through to our representative at FCM is that it amazes me that so many lower municipalities across Canada are grappling with this issue. And we have a federal government in the throes of a pandemic. And so therefore, I cut them some slack because we're all dealing with it. But they had no issue in adding certain names to a list at the drop of a hat. And I question, what is it that our federal government doesn't seem to get or want to do specific to this issue? Because really they are the only ones as it relates to the symbol itself in terms of creating legislation that then can withstand charter challenges that are going to come down the pipe. And I just leave it at that because I applaud the effort that everyone is making, whether it be here in Collingwood, whether it be in the city of Cambridge, wherever. But until the federal government actually steps up and creates legislation that then can be put into law, and if somebody wants to challenge it, well, that's their right under the Constitution. But then and only then can we, as a local municipality, be able to actually take action and remove these symbols. So anyway, thank you. No, get down off my soapbox.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have Councillor Berman and then Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I just thought about when the Deputy Mayor explained the two. And I want to see if this will show up if I hold it up. This is the view from my front porch today. And I think everybody on council knows where I live, maybe not the two staff. Dean, can you just maybe follow up the Deputy Mayor's comment on what it would take to get something done about this, why it's not an easy fix?
Yeah, through your worship. Effectively, it's outside of the municipal jurisdiction, and because of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the broad understanding or broad legal definition of what is free speech in Canada, we don't have the power to remove the flag if it's seen to be removed. So then we need to have some methodology or some tools provided by the federal government through legislation that would allow the municipality to take action.
Thank you, Dean. Any follow-up, Councillor Berman? Okay. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So just directly to the Deputy Mayor, I'd like to think the clout, particularly facing an election period where an organization that represents over 90% of the Canadian population and 2,000 municipalities would have the clout to have them listen. And that's the very essence of FCM. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do.
Thank you. Any other questions, comment, council? It's been a good discussion. Deputy Mayor.
So I say this with tongue in cheek, but I 100% agree with you, Councillor Jeffrey. And in saying that, then no pressure. There's no pressure on you.
And with that, we'll call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Notices of motion, item 11, notices of motion. Are there any notices, Councillor Jeffrey? Go ahead, and Councillor Hamlin, I think this, she's just reading in the notice, but if you'd like to recuse yourself, you certainly can.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So this is regarding a deputant's request for funding. Am I getting feedback?
We can hear you. I'll turn my mic on.
Whereas the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, hereinafter referred to as the Institute, is purposed to connect and engage the talent and aspirations of all residents in collaborative ways in 5 interconnected priority areas: arts and culture, business and innovation, social justice, health and well-being, and the environment. And whereas the goals of the Institute are favorably aligned with our Town of Collingwood's strategic goals contained in the community-based strategic plan to promote sustainability locally and regionally. And whereas the Institute is facilitating an educational series compelled by the issues surfacing during the pandemic and focusing on building collaborative efforts towards a sustainable future for generations to come. Therefore, be it resolved that Council authorize partnership support in the amount of $2,500 to the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay to support this series, which will match the Institute's financial investment.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. So we'll be dealing with that in our first meeting in March. Sarah, if you can just let Councillor Hanlon know we're moving on. And that brings us to item 12, 12.1, any old or deferred business, Council? Seeing none. 12.2, other business, and 12.2.1 is an International Women's Day presentation. Councillor Comey.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure that Stephanie will tee up. I've done it as a video this year. Oh, I'm getting feedback too, Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind doing it. I made a video this year. I'm no video wizard, but I hope you enjoy it. I would like to take a moment to really thank Clerk Almas. I don't know how many of you know, but when I first came to her with the idea of the town recognizing this day, she was incredibly supportive, and she facilitated a meeting with then CAO Amin, who of course was also incredibly supportive. So I really want to take a moment to thank Clerk Almas for being right there from the beginning, and Deputy Clerk Dahl, who was really behind this super cool flag design that will go up very soon in honor of International Women's Day. And again, the entire town, all the committee, the event organizers, so many of you have attended the events. They have been passionate and incredible and very, very important. So I thank you all. I won't take any of your time, but please be sure to join us for International Women's Day.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move.
Thank you for that. And I know this year there's a special edition with the Jordan Municipal Support Project. And Councillor Jeffrey, maybe you'd like to speak a bit to that.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So as I reported to Council, I was appointed as the governance rep to the Jordan Project. It's FCM's only international program in the Middle East. And just before Christmas, it occurred to me that our event was virtual, and what was the possibility of having some of the Jordan women join us in our event as participants. And as our staff developed it, it turned out that we have two that are going to be panelists. And I think what we speak to or spoke to in our meetings between the two staffs, FCM staff and our event staff, was the fact that despite our geographies, the issues and challenges and opportunities are very similar, and that this will bring some solidarity for the women in Jordan and some great understanding for us here in Canada and in little old Collingwood. So we're being featured highly at FCM, and I'm very appreciative to all the work that Karen Cubitt and Rosemary and Amanda and the whole team did in welcoming this addition value added to our event. So I'm really looking forward to the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. It will be a good event, a great event. That brings us to item 13.1. Oh, before I move on, is there any other business? Just make sure I've gone through. Seeing none, then we'll move on to the in-camera item 13. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to 1, the security of the property of the town or local board, item B, 2, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land for town or local board purposes, item A, and 3, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, and that's item B. And the matters for discussion today are A, land sale, Beach Street Lane, and B, New Tecumseh Improvement Society. A mover and a seconder, please, council. Moved by Councillor Madigan, second by Councillor Berman. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And council, it's now 7:25. We'll take a 10-minute bio break and we will reconvene at 7:35 for the in-camera session.
And just a reminder, there is a separate link for the in-camera this evening, and then we will rise and report back through this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for that. So we will be back in 10 minutes then. Thank you, council. All right, Stephanie, maybe you can start the live streaming. So when everyone gets here, we're ready to go. Please.
You're ready.
We're ready. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Just a reminder for all councillors to change their name.
How do you do that?
Participants, and dialog box will open on the side. Hover over yourself, you'll see more. Click on more, and you'll have an option for renaming or changing your picture. Playing the role of IT specialist today would be.
All right. Have we got everyone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, council. We are back in open session. There is a motion. Be it resolved that council rise from in camera and return to public session at 8:34 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? It's moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor Madigan. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And then we have a motion relating to Beach Street, or sorry, the laneway behind 59 Beach Street. And there is a motion, and that reads: the council hereby revoke the declaration of surplus land previously declared for the Beach Street lane located between 69 and 59 Beach Street, and the lane remain in the ownership of the town of Collingwood. And further, that council directs staff to proceed with notice of the potential closure of the lane to vehicular traffic and prepare the necessary bylaw to be considered at a future meeting of council following the required notice and public feedback. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Jeffrey, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any questions or comments before I call the vote, council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us then to our confirmatory bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2021-6 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held February 22, 2021 be enacted and passed this 22nd day of February 2021. Moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor Comey. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And what we're lacking now is a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jeffrey. Thank you very much. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. It was a busy night. Good job. And enjoy the rest of the night.